This week, we'll be talking to Richard Stallman about version 4 of the GPL and how it's going to protect all of our software from being stolen.
Mm-hmm. And after that, we'll show you how to recover from those pesky ZFS on Linux corruption issues, as well as some tips on how to explain to your boss that all production boxes were compromised.
Your questions and the latest GNUs on Linux Now, the place to Linux.
BSD Now, episode 31, recorded April 1st, 2014. Hey, I'm your host, Chris Moore.
And I'm Alan Jude.
Hey, glad to have you guys with us this week on the first week of April. Yes, spring is just about here. It's warming up.
Yes.
We're enjoying it. But got a lot of cool BSD news to get out for you guys today. So first up, we want to mention some pre-orders for some cool BSD stuff. Now, I think, do you have the link to show on the screen here, Alan?
Yep. If it would work.
So... Yep. We got the second edition of the design and implementation of the FreeBSD operating system is up for sale. So for those who don't know what that is, here's my older copy of it.
This is a second edition. The first edition Chris has here is about FreeBSD 5, so that would have been, 10 years ago, right?
Oh, gosh. Yeah,
I think there should be copyright date at the front, yeah?
Date on the bottom.
But I think it's about 2003?
2000, fourth printing was 2008. When was the first? 2005,
Okay.
It looks like.
Yeah, so it's about 10 years old.
Yeah, it's been a while now. Yeah, it's been a while. But still, I mean, even if you can get your hands on one of these older books, it's just full of good stuff. And a lot of the information, like how they do terminal handling and you know, the NFS file system and some of those things are just going to be useful now.
And there's a lot of new stuff in the newer one. The newer one has a whole section on ZFS. They added Robert Watson as one of the authors because there's a whole chapter on capsicum and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
If you just have an interest in how an operating system is designed, even if you're not particularly interested in FreeBSD itself, or you know, if you want to work on any subsystem of FreeBSD, it's, you know, grab this and see how it's actually designed so that when you bolt on, it just makes things easier.
Well, I was telling you, Alan, a second ago, like when I was doing some development, even this last week, just being able to look up and hear what the structure references and, well, this is what this does and why it does it this way. That just makes a lot more sense when you're actually doing the development and kind of knowing a little bit of what's going on underneath the hood. But just all kinds of good stuff, everything from inodes to jails and everything in between. So,
and we've interviewed the authors as well. We talked to George Neville Neal back in January. And then we had Kirk. We caught up with him at EuroBSDCon, but that was in our October 2nd episode, Stacks of Cash. But I got to hang out quite a bit with Kirk in Tokyo just a couple of days ago too, so that was great.
Sure. So that's really cool. Yeah. So I guess pull a quote here. For many years, the design implementation of FreeBSD operating system has been recognized as the most complete, up-to-date, and authoritative technical guide to FreeBSD's internal structures. Now this definitive guide has been extensively updated to reflect all the major FreeBSD improvements between version 5 and the upcoming 11. So this is going to be really current, up-to-date stuff. Good stuff.
And because it's kind of the only book of its type, it's... on like reading lists for a bunch of things that you wouldn't think of, like people going to work at Google to work on Linux are still required to read this book because it kind of gives you the idea of, you know, the original one, even the 4.4 BSD one from like 20 years ago this is how you build an operating system. Yeah.
These were the design decisions that were made even way back in the day that we still hold to now, and they still stand the test of time today. And this is how we incorporate them in a modern operating system.
Yes. So even if you're not especially into just FreeBSD, this book is still recommended reading for anybody who wants to know how an operating system works or wants to build one or build onto one or whatever.
Cool. So I guess the OpenBSD 5.5 pre-orders are also up. We'd like to mention.
If you'd like to buy your OpenBSD 5.5 CD set, they're $50, and it comes with 3 different CDs in a soft shell DVD case.
Is there any new music with this one?
I think there's music with everyone, so I assume so. I don't actually.
Okay.
It doesn't say.
Good deal. That's very cool.
But they're expected to ship May 1st.
Oh, okay. Fantastic. So you can, of course, support their project and get the release of the OS before it's even available publicly.
Yep.
So very cool. There's a good incentive to pre-order
And
there.
random note at the top here says that if you order 20 CDs or more, you get a 40% discount.
Oh, okay. Good deal. Some for you, some for your friends.
Yeah.
Do a little evangelizing now at your next Linux Fest or conference you go to.
Go to a security conference, find all the really paranoid people, and be like, here, you need this.
Yes. This will fix all your problems. Yep. So 5.5, of course, is going to be a huge release for these guys with a lot of big changes. So this is the right time to go ahead and purchase one of these. Go ahead and tell Austin we sent you if you end up picking one up. So good deal. So next up, we got some news about Package Source Con 2014 as a call for papers.
Yeah, we talked about the announcement when it came out a little while ago that it was going to be in London, but now they have their call for papers. They're looking for people that want to talk about anything to do with package source,
cool.
Getting applications to work across the portable.
Mm-hmm. And this is taking place June 21st and 22nd. Yep. As you said, it's in London. So if that sounds like something you can make it out to or would like to give a talk and you've done some work in this area, I mean, you might as well put something in there. I'm sure they'd appreciate the submission.
So, yeah.
So anything related to package source is pretty much fine, and it's pretty informal.
So I imagine also anything to do with porting applications to ARM and other architectures and anything to do with porting things to anything is probably the kind of content they're looking for at Package Source Con.
Cool. So another thing we want to ask, if anyone attends that, let us know if they're going to record talks, because we'd like to get our hands on them and highlight them for you guys here in the show, since the con is relatively unknown and new to us. So we'll be interested to hear how it goes.
I didn't know that there was such a thing, and then I look and there's like, oh, they've had like 8 or 9 of them. It's like, this has been going on for a while.
First I've heard of it too. Yep. So yeah, get us some info about it. Anybody who attends, we'd love to get a small write-up or some details, since me and Alan won't necessarily be there. So we would love to have you be our eyes and ears.
Exactly.
Good deal. So next up, BSD Mag issue for March 2014 has now hit. So this time the topics are going to include deploying NetBSD using the AWS EC2 cluster, creating a multi-purpose file server with NetBSD, Dragonfly BSD as a backup server, some more GIMP lessons. We got network analysis with Wireshark, and a general security article. So
and then a couple of random Linux articles that somehow get in there.
Yeah, let's just kind of slip a few of those in there, huh?
Yeah, you don't often see things with like Ubuntu in the title in your BSD magazines.
Yeah, that does seem a little odd, but they're still cranking though and getting stuff out there. So sounds like a good issue. And of course, I believe those are still free to download, so you can just grab the digital version right off their website. So next up, we have an interesting article here about non-ECC RAM and FreeNAS. Now, I know we've gotten a few questions about this. So what is the clarification, or what are we hearing about this?
So this is actually a blog article by a person that specifically chose not to use ECC RAM when they built their FreeNAS machine. As a side note, I actually asked Matt Ahrens, the creator of ZFS, about this because we get so many questions about it and so many people very strongly believing that if they tried to use FreeNAS or any ZFS without really expensive ECC RAM, that everything would explode and there would be fires and things.
Yeah, it would eat all your data.
ZFS is likely your best option if you can't afford ECC RAM because it has the redundancy on the disk, right? So if it has a checksum, and if memory corruption causes that checksum not to match, it will then pull the copy out of redundancy and overwrite the copy it thought was bad. Now, the copy it thought was bad might actually have been fine because it was just a problem with the RAM, but ZFS will continue anyway. And people were concerned because they thought a scrub would munge all their data if there's one problem with a piece of RAM. But it's like, no, the scrub is read-only. Right? The scrub just reads every bit and checks the checksum. If there was something wrong with your RAM, it's likely not going to cause every read to be bad, only, a very small fraction of them. And so ZFS would just think, oh, your drive is misbehaving, I will cover that for you, when maybe it didn't need to, but it's not going to make anything worse.
Yeah, I say if you got bad RAM, you already
Yes.
got
So
problems.
obviously, having ECC RAM is better, especially for uptime. You know, the biggest thing
Yeah,
it does is prevent random kernel panics, which can cause a bit of data loss on ZFS. Not
Sure.
the same, but it just means that, you know, ZFS writes out in 5-second groups. So if the machine gets turned off, if a kernel panics in the middle of that,
Last
then
transaction group's gone.
yeah, you lost 2 or 3 seconds of whatever you're writing. The important thing is because ZFS is copy on write, you don't actually lose any data. You just get a picture of what your data looked like the last time it was flushed.
The previous time it was
Whereas with a regular file system, because you're overwriting data in place, you get what's called a shorn write, where you have your block of data and you've written the first half of it with the new data, but the second half of it is the old data, and now that data makes absolutely no sense.
that is where your corruption
Yeah,
creeps
exactly. And so that's where you get the problem of, hey, that's gibberish now. And ZFS actually prevents that. But anyway, so, the article mentions the benefits of ECC and admits obviously ECC is better, but you know, it's hard to find on the motherboards and stuff you're going to find at your local computer store. And if you're building a little machine for home, you maybe don't need it.
Yeah, ECC just overkill. Yeah, it's one of those things. The bottom line, ZFS, it's just better all around, regardless of the type of memory
and
you're
don't
using.
let people try to scare you and tell you have to have ECC to use ZFS.
No.
The guy who invented
Nonsense.
the thing told me, no, it's fine. Which makes me feel better considering I have a bunch of machines that don't have ECC that are running ZFS. Nothing especially important.
I don't think any of my machines here are ECC. They're all regular.
But you know, there was a lot of FUD going around with, you know, especially the people from the BTRFS camp saying that, oh, you can't use ZFS unless you have enterprise grade hardware, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no.
Oh, that's nonsense.
Exactly. It's nonsense. Chris and I both run ZFS on our laptops.
Yes, come on. So my laptop, I yanked the DVD drive out, and I'm even doing dual discs in there and using ZFS, and it just runs. It's solid. I used to run it on a little EEE netbook that I had with 1 gig of memory, and it ran great on that too. What do you know? So yeah, it's really nonsense at this point in time.
So this is kind
cool.
of talks about it and helps dispel this FUD. You know, ECC, all of the things, but you don't have to.
Sure.
Obviously, it's better, but you know, it's not a requirement.
Yeah. Oh, very cool. Well, that does sound like a good article. I'm flipping through. It's quite a
nice
long one,
and
so you'll
got
probably
some
want to
updates as well.
Yeah, set some time aside to go read that if you're curious about that whole issue of ECC versus non-ECC. And of course, we'll have the link in the show notes post-show. So that's actually a good segue since we're already in our topic of ZFS and FreeNAS and all that. So, of course, this week's episode brought to you by IX Systems, where, of course, you can get pretty much any kind of server you need built. They will build for you, and they will build it to the exact specifications that you need to solve whatever particular problem you're trying to solve. So, of course, they're building off all the latest and greatest Intel CPUs and processors, and you know they've built some monster systems with 80 cores, etc.
Yeah, or this one, the one I got up on the screen right now is the Megaport.
Oh, yeah.
It's on top of having 80 cores in to use. It's actually split into 4 separate computers, though. Each one has 2 10-core Intel CPUs. Each of those also has 6 10 gigabit ports, 2 copper and 4 fiber optic 10 gigabit ports, and each of the 4 computers that stuffed in this one 2U chassis. There's literally no room left on the chassis for any more ports.
Maxed out of the factory there.
The port density is just insane. And it just goes to show that no matter what your challenge is, they can find a solution and build something custom. You know, I'm actually going back and forth right now to build a server for my needs. I have this machine in the basement and it's misbehaving, so I'm going to upgrade it. And specifically, I have, because it's for my house, they're just SATA hard drives, not enterprise hard drives. So SAS expanders don't really play nice and cause problem. So I managed to, they built me a machine with a direct attach backplane. So each of the 12 hot swap drive bays is discretely wired to the controller, so that instead of using the expander, it'll require having 2 controllers to have enough ports, but it means that I don't have to use an expander, and I'll be able to use my nice cheap desktop drives in my ZFS array.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, there's not many chassis that offer that option, but they managed to find it and build one for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I look forward to showing that off, and I get it in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, that'll be cool. I'm looking forward to seeing that. And I know we've mentioned in previous weeks, too, the new revision of the FreeNAS Mini they have out.
They just did an install guide or an install tutorial on YouTube.
Oh, okay, cool. So I got 2 links here to that, both of those.
So the first one is shows you what you need and how to build FreeNAS. This one, I think, is actually walking you through all the components and stuff.
Yep. And we have the unboxing here. I'm watching. Very nice.
Yeah,
very
the
nice.
second one is someone is actually unboxing theirs. And you can see the nice little black box. But you also see separately this giant foam brick. And that's where all the hard drives are stuffed in. And you can see that it's just really immense amount of very dense foam. And that's how the hard drives, 4 terabyte hard drives from our big storage server came. And it's just... The packaging that IX uses to ship me the hard drives is so much better than the packaging I get when I bought the hard drives directly from the manufacturer.
The manufacturer, yeah.
It's like...
That's how they've shipped them to me, too. It's like, oh, nothing's going to happen to this.
Yeah, it's like... I went to my local computer store and ordered literally a crate of Seagate hard drives. So it comes in the original box from Seagate, and they're like, don't throw this box away, we want it back. And you know, it's a special box for holding hard drives and holding dynamic number of hard drives. There's this fancy diagram on the box that shows this box holds 20 hard drives. If you're only going to put 15 in it, you have to put them in this order and leave these gaps so the box isn't heavier on one side than the other or something, right? But it just doesn't have near the amount of protection that you get from this crazy foam that IX uses.
Well, you know, they do their burn-in process, and they want to be sure that after the burn-in's done, the drive you get in the mail is just exactly the same as what they had on the bench. Yeah,
exactly. They put all this effort into making sure the hard drive was good before they shipped it to you. They don't want it to get broken during shipping.
Yep, exactly. So, yeah, that's just the kind of attention to detail that you need in a company that's going to be building new systems. I mean, everything from, you know, smaller, cheaper FreeNAS minis to your big honking 80-core systems.
Right,
either way, you just want it to work when it shows up.
When I bought the big system, we got 34 terabyte hard drives. And I expected them to come like that, you know, in the little static bag, stuffed in the foam. I didn't expect that much foam, but whatever. And I was like, it's really going to suck to take each of those out, get the little drive thing, and screw in the 6 screws. It's like, that's literally going to take like an hour and a half to install all these hard drives. And then we opened the box and it's like, oh, they took the drives out, put them in the things, and then put them back in the static bag and then stuck them in the foam. So we literally just plop, 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 6 to 30 hard drives, and it took like 3 minutes instead of an hour. And it was just like, wow, these guys know what they're doing.
Very cool. Well, of course, same as last week, but that URL is going to be ixsystems.com/BSD Now. So please go there, fill out the info. You'll get a free guide you can download on how to purchase a server for open source, and let them know that we sent you from BSD Now. That's just good to give them the heads up where you heard about them. So anyway, glad we're able to talk a little bit about the IX, some of the cool stuff they're doing. We'll be back in just a moment with our interview for the week. Okay, we're joined today by Pierre Poner, the founder of Edgy BSD. Glad to have you with us, Pierre.
Yeah, I'm glad to have to be with you here today.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, well, go ahead and just tell us a little bit about yourself. How'd you first get involved with BSD?
It's a funny story, really. I mean, myself first, I'm 31, French, been living in Germany for a few years now. Been using computers for a while, but like around the year 2000, I was introduced to Linux by a friend, and then I also had a look at FreeBSD and OpenBSD at the time, but didn't really catch my attention so much. However, a few years later at school, we had a sysadmin class. We were like the team of the Unix savvy guys who were using Linux a lot. And then the teacher thought he should give us a challenge. So he asked us to use NetBSD instead, because he wanted us to have a hard time trying to set it up. But I liked it so much that I just became a developer eventually. And yeah, after this class, I migrated all of my systems to NetBSD, basically.
Cool. So how did you go from being a regular user in the NetBSD community to being a committer?
Well, first I began to submit patches because there were some things this and there that I didn't like or that I wanted to improve. Then I realized I could use some drivers from OpenBSD, so I backported some of that, submitted them, some of them were accepted. And then I began to write my own drivers. And I got to know some NetBSD developers doing that who told me about joining. First I wasn't sure because I wanted to stay independent because of my consulting job and some other things. But then I realized it only made sense that I contribute directly, that I commit directly to the project. So I joined NetBSD sometime in April 2012, so 2 years ago now.
All right, cool. So what do you currently do in the NetBSD project? What hats do you wear over there?
Well, exactly right now, not much, unfortunately, because my day job is quite time-consuming. I did start HBSD in spite of this in the middle of last year, so I would say that's the hat I'm wearing now. It's kind of black today. To summarize, I'm the troublemaker who cares about NetBSD on the desktop, on tablets, and smartphones, and who had to do his own thing on the side. Yeah.
So we haven't heard a lot about Edgy BSD. Could you tell us a little more what it is and why you created it?
So as I mentioned, it's fairly recent. It's not even 1 year old. We are still in a phase with the few other developers who joined where we are building the infrastructure, figuring out the workflow. And so, yeah, that's where we are right now. It's still the infancy.
Right, but do you have a specific goal or?
I mean, the most important reason why it was started is to be able to use Git with NetBSD and to be able to do that as a group. I needed Git myself because I just couldn't use CVS anymore, simply because I was usually working on NetBSD while commuting and I didn't have internet access. So I just couldn't commit offline because CVS doesn't allow you to do that. So then I was also maintaining my own binary packages for my different machines. And the official binaries didn't fit my needs, so I had to do this myself. And it was just a shame to do all of this work, possibly the same as some other developers or users, while not being able to share this, all of that. So HBSD is basically a place for all of us to hang out together, share our work on using Git as the SCM, and to be able to collaborate a bit more this way.
I'm glad somebody else is using Git. I really like it now that I've switched over. It's good to see you guys on that.
Interesting note that today's April Fool's Day, and the SVN Jira tracker mentions that they're switching to Git.
Oh, nice.
So the development of SVN will not take place in Git. Probably just an April Fool's
Maybe it's not a joke.
It's an April Fool's joke. But
Yeah.
So would EdgeBSD then be considered a fork in NetBSD, or changes going back and forth? How's the relationship work there?
So I don't want to use the word fork because they are historically connoted as being bad, duplicating work and effort. So this is not my goal. However, I mean, we all know now that forks are cheap, and so I would say they look more like clones. So HBSD is a clone of NetBSD.
I like that. I'm going to use that for PC-BSD now. We're not a fork, we're a clone. There you go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we're really trying to get changes go back and forth. It's a bit of a challenge in some cases. Like from NetBSD to HBSD, we are having difficulties because the CVS tree is currently converted automatically to JIT. But in NetBSD, some people use the CVS admin command to change commits after the fact. And it breaks the chain of commits in Git. So we have to resynchronize regularly, and it's very painful because it's a really big repository. So we don't have really an answer for this yet. We're working on it. And from HBSD to NetBSD, yes, we do have some improvements which we propose. Some of them were accepted. So yeah, we're really trying to keep in sync.
Cool.
Yep.
So going forward, what do you see as the long-term goals for EdgeBSD?
Okay, so Git and Git. No, I mean, I don't see NetBSD evolving in this regard for source code management anytime soon. For some good reasons, actually, because I tried Git on my Spark 64 machine, and it didn't really work. It didn't even get to the point where it would consume all of the RAM. It even stopped before that. So it's not very convenient for native work on NetBSD right now. However, yeah. Sorry, what was the question again?
Well, long-term goals.
Oh, long term.
BSD.
Yes. I don't even think so much about that right now. I would say I would like to propose a modern system. I would like the system to be easy to use, easy to install, possibly switching to a graphical installation mechanism and a default desktop environment maybe.
Sure.
I want to be able to run NetBSD on my smartphone even, so that would be great. I've been working on this on the Nokia 900 smartphone. I presented something at BSDCon last year.
Okay.
So ideally, I would like to run HBSD on each and every of my devices and have them nicely integrated, talking together.
Cool. So what is Edge BSD's target audience? I guess it's not so much servers, but more desktops and mobile devices?
Yeah, my own focus is desktops and embedded devices, but it's nothing that should harm using it on servers. So we are like now 6-7 developers. Some of us are doing emulated work, like working on virtual CPUs. Some of us are using NetBSD on desktops or on embedded devices. So it's really open.
Mm-hmm. So what's the release cycle like, and how closely do you work with the NetBSD security team?
So about security, it's a tricky question. I'm working at the same time closely and far away from the security team of NetBSD because Guillaume Lasmeillou, GLS, who is part of the package source security team, joined us. So he's together with us and he's trying to push for some changes in NetBSD proper, like long-term support for packages. But unfortunately, we haven't gotten to the point where this would be accepted. So we have to keep this in HBSD for now. And it's a bit challenging with the issues with the conversion from CVS to JIT. We cannot easily import the package source patches back to us. But yeah, that's something we need to do anyway. So
how can people get involved and help out if they're interested with the Edge BSD project?
So the easiest way right now is to drop by the IRC channel, because we are a bit lazy and don't document everything yet on the internet. We're still figuring out everything. However, we also have 2 mailing lists, one for users, one for developers. And if you're not sure, simply cross-post. I don't care.
Oh, there you go. Cool. Anything else you want to mention before we go? We have a link to your FOSDEM presentation in the show notes as well, if people would like to see that.
Yeah, awesome. And I would like also to mention that we released the paper and did a presentation at Asia BSDCon this year, myself and Guillaume together. I'm not sure if the video is available anywhere yet. We certainly should have published the paper and slides already. We didn't do that, sorry.
I don't think the video's
the
up
video's
yet.
not up yet, but if you were at Asia BSDCon and missed the talk, it'll be the paper will be in your proceedings binder.
Yes.
But
I checked, it's in there.
It should go. I guess you'll get around to posting it soon, maybe?
Yeah, I want to do that. I mean, it's a good reminder to do it tonight.
Yes, if you do it tonight, send us the URL and we'll include it in the show notes for when we publish the episode. So that
Okay, awesome. Yeah. Another really great thing at Asia BSDCon was to be able to be in a single room with so many NetBSD developers. I don't think it had happened to me before. There are really lots of Japanese NetBSD developers, and it was like really heartwarming to be with them all.
Yeah, definitely cool. It was a great turnout at Asia BSDCon this year.
Had a good time.
And it was good to see all the projects represented so well.
That's the other thing is, having lots of people from every project rather than being kind of dominated by one project or the other.
FreeBSD.
Yeah, that tends to happen. But it's good to see everyone showing up, though.
So are you planning to come to any of the other conferences this year?
This year, maybe EuroBSDCon, in Sofia.
Okay, well, good deal. Well, cool. Thank you so much for being on the show with us today, Pierre.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, it was great.
Thank you.
Excellent. If you guys want to find out more about Edge BSD, of course, hit the show notes after the show's up, and you can click on all the links and see all what this project is about. This week on our tutorial, we're going to be taking a look at some OpenBSD desktop good stuff. So, of course, while the family of BSD's operating systems are known around the world for their stability, scalability, performance, and security in the server room, they actually make pretty nice desktops as well. So the tutorial today is going to show you how to go from a fresh, minimal install of OpenBSD to a stylish graphical desktop. So once you've got the system up and running after the install, you can log in as root and we'll get started. So be sure you included all the X sets that you needed in your install. And a good first thing to do is always verify that your network connection is working properly, since we're probably going to be fetching a lot of stuff here.
So in this example, TJ put in GNOME 3 as the desktop environment. But because that depends on the graphical acceleration, it won't actually work in VirtualBox. So if you're using VirtualBox for yours, as like I am for the tutorial, you might want to just substitute that for XFCE instead.
Yes.
So obviously the first thing to do is to make sure you have all the updates installed for your OpenBSD. So they have the errata page where they post the any known problems with various versions of OpenBSD. And we can see here's the 5.4 release in errata patch set. And it talks about, the 6 patches that you might need to apply. I've already done that, so I'm going to skip that, but you would have to go through that if this was a fresh install for you. It says, even a desktop system should probably have a firewall, so we'll just quickly set up a firewall.
And what better firewall than the industry standard PF?
So, PF-fig. And we'll just drop in this simple set of rules. And we'll also add a couple things to our rc.conf.local. So this is just so that when the system boots, it will run these scripts. This is just how you enable third-party services on OpenBSD. If you're going to be using a lot of programs like Firefox, you might also need to adjust some of the resource settings.
The memory limit specifically?
So in your login.conf, the default here is to set the maximum data size of an application to 512 megabytes. If you're using Firefox, you might need to stick a 1 on the front of that number.
Yeah.
And so on.
These browsers, you get 50 tabs open, it gets a little heavy there.
So you can save that as well. And then just for a desktop, what TJ recommended here was adding to your root file system.
No wait time.
Yes. So what this will do is avoid writing to your disk and updating the last access time on each file as you access it. And obviously doing that will make things much quicker.
Sure.
Well, it'll avoid doing a bunch of writes when you don't need them. Especially, on things like /tmp where it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And then so since X11 itself is actually included in OpenBSD because they maintain their own fork of it that is able to run as not root, which is quite interesting actually, you don't have to actually install X11 or Xorg. You just need to install all the other graphical bits that you might need. So in this case, that's GNOME 3 or XFCE if you're in VirtualBox or on a machine that doesn't have a supported graphics card.
Sure.
You also need to pick a specific mirror close to you for the best speeds. And one of the other packages that's available in OpenBSD 5.5 and later is Toad, which is their hot plugging for CD DVD drives.
Looks like it does maybe like USB media and stuff as well.
And then they also include the utility YouTube-DL, which will download the HTML5 version of a video from YouTube and let you play it in MPlayer. So the first thing we need to do is set our package path, which is where we're going to get the packages from. And then we can just do package add. That's an interesting package name. GStreamer-plugins-ugly.
Yes. They have the good, the bad, and the ugly sets of GStreamer.
Some Linux person has the has too much of a sense of humor. So anyway, it also handily shows you the package name it's starting to install, and then when it's doing a dependency, it tells you why it's doing that dependency. So we can say that pulling in GNOME 3.8 is pulling in JPEG, TIFF, PNG, ASPEL, dbus, etc.
Sure.
It'd actually be kind of nice if FreeBSD's package NG did that. Be like, the reason why I'm installing this package you don't actually want is because of X. You can find out after, just, while it's downloading. Sometimes you're just curious. But anyway, once all the packages are done, because I don't think I'm going to wait because it hasn't even got around to Firefox yet. If you just reboot, it should start up the GDM, the GNOME Desktop Manager, and that'll give you a graphical login screen. You can log into your user, and you will have your desktop. And then, it's XFCE or GNOME, so you configure that the same way you would on any other distribution. And so that's all it takes to give you a OpenBSD with a GNOME or XFCE desktop.
That's too easy, too easy. Well, cool. Thanks, Alan. Great tutorial.
And someone else did this and helped with the tutorial a bit, I think. And they sent in a picture. So I can get that up here quick.
Okay.
Helps if you don't have a quote on the front of it. Come on, load. There we go.
Assume of GNOME
Yes,
3.
and this is a picture of their system showing they have Firefox with the OpenBSD webpage and a map of Paris and a little sticky note and all that kind of fun stuff.
Cool. Well, fantastic. Well, great, Alan. Thanks. And again, so that shows you it's not all that difficult to go from a bare bones OpenBSD all the way to a graphical desktop.
And specifically, it's really quick, right? Like installing a bare bones OpenBSD takes literally 3 minutes. And the package has a couple of commands here, and you have an XFCE desktop. Faster than, most Linux distros can walk you through all the questions
the
they
initial
have.
installation. Yeah. That's very cool. Next up, our weekly news roundup. We're going to be going through some of the quick notables from this last week. So first up, we're going to be continuing with our Getting to Know Your Port Manager Lurkers series. So who did we get to hear from this week?
Frédéric Coulot.
So I guess he was, originally an OpenBSD user from France?
And he joined the ports team as a committer in 2010 by submitting many patches to get programs up and running. And recently he's joined the Port Manager Lurkers team. So Port Manager is the group that are actually in charge of the ports tree and charged with the responsibility of maintaining it and so on. We talked to Joe Marcus Clark a couple of weeks ago. And they have this Lurkers thing where it's an extended set of people that also pay attention to what's happening on the Port Manager team, mostly so that there's extra people that know what's going on, and kind of provides a pool of candidates that are already in the loop.
It's like the training grounds.
It's a pool of people that are already in the loop to step up and join port manager when they need to replace people.
Which is a good idea. That's stuff I think they should do with a lot of the teams.
So his committer name is Sculo because he says it's a lack of inspiration. He just used his last name as his username rather than coming up with one. He's originally from France, but he currently lives in Luxembourg.
Okay.
And he's IT consultant working in the banking sector. He says he doesn't always do IT. He's also interested in business and management. So that's interesting.
Well, so one of the pull quotes here too is he says, FreeBSD is also one of my sources of inspiration when it comes to how organizations behave and innovate. And I find it very interesting to compare FreeBSD with the for-profits that he works for. That's kind of cool. Neat. So it sounds like we'll get to read a little bit more about him, why he loves FreeBSD and what he does for the project. So, of course, you'll have to hit that link up after the show's over and the notes are available. Are they already on the website? Did we do that this week?
For which, sorry?
Did we already put the show notes up on the website ahead of time this week?
If not, then TJ will do it while we're talking.
Okay. It'll be there momentarily, I'm sure. Yep. He says they're always up early. So there you go. Yes. You can go look at it right now if you're watching live.
And he says his most embarrassing moment was that he had got about 700 commits in without breaking anything, and he was feeling really good about himself. And then he managed to break the index file, which messes up the entire port tree.
The 701st commit was the deadly one. It's okay. You're not a real port cutter until you've broken index, right? You got to do it at least once.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, next up, we have a cool article about NetBSD on the PlayStation 2. So, of course, I mean, who doesn't want to run NetBSD on your old PS2 that you have probably not even attached at this point, just kind of sitting in the closet and you haven't traded it in or sold it yet? But I guess originally the NetBSD had this, but it was removed back in 2009. But since it has been revived, so support has been put back in for the PS2.
So, yeah, apparently the code changes needed to support the slightly unusual MIPS CPU that runs the PlayStation 2 never got merged into GCC or binutils mainline, and so they weren't available. Only recently that was finally fixed, and so GCC 4.8.3, which is what's in NetBSD current now, provides support, and you can now build NetBSD for your PlayStation 2 once again.
Fantastic. That's really cool.
And
so you can put that old hardware to use doing something interesting. Maybe a media streaming box.
I don't know how fast that MIPS CPU is. I don't think it's
I don't
very
know what
fast.
kind of support that is. Probably no hardware video decoding.
Probably not on a PlayStation 2.
Yeah. Interesting. It'd be an interesting project. If any of you guys out there do this and have some results with that, let us know. That'd be an interesting side
especially
project
now that
to talk about.
Most people's PlayStation 2s are retired now.
Yeah, and I think like GameStop here doesn't even carry the games for them anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, it's in the dustbin of the electronics world.
So that makes it a great candidate for reuse.
Definitely. Good deal. So next up, FreeBSD challenge update.
Checking in on our old friends over here at the Linux Cauldron.
Yep. So how do you say it's going this week?
This is day 22 of 30 of using FreeBSD, although his actual time's been spread out a little bit more, but you get the idea.
Sure. So I guess it says this time he just starts off by discovering that virtual machines suck at keeping accurate time, and some ports weren't working due to his clock being way off. That can be an issue for sure.
Ports sometimes don't work. Also, fetching the files. It's like, hey, this file was modified in the future. What's up with that?
Yeah.
That seems hinky.
Right. No time travel allowed. You have broken the laws of
or
physics.
you try to download something over SSL, and it's like, this SSL certificate's not valid until next year. What's up with that?
Yeah.
Actually, there was someone in the chat room just before the show saying they were getting this, OCSP future error, and they were like, "What's that?" And I'm like, "It means your clock is wrong."
The
important thing, anytime you're dealing with certificates or anything, it's very important to have accurate time.
So I guess it says he polled IRC for help, and he learned the differences between NTP date and NTPD and how to use both of them.
Yes, because
of course,
NTP date updates your time once, NTPD updates it all the time.
Yes. And of course, he could have just read our utility or our tutorial on NTP, but I digress. That might have saved you a little bit of trouble there, but still, I'm glad you're able to figure it out and you learned some stuff out of it too.
Yeah.
Good deal. Okay, next up.
Also, I see he manually doing weird things to set the time zone, and then in the end he learned, you just run TZ setup, and There, your time zone is
Does
set
it.
up.
You don't have to copy the file
Yeah.
manually to Etsy the
Yeah.
time. Yeah. Well, good deal. Well, cool. We have next up our PC-BSD weekly digest. So just some little updates in PC-BSD land this last week. We've gotten some fixes into the tree for the mount tray. It's going to be better at detecting CDs and DVDs. You know, if you plug in an audio CD or a DVD video, make sure it brings up the appropriate application to play or view that. So this, you know about this one, Alan. We had a faulty node in the CDN,
Yes.
which we finally tracked down, and it says destroyed here, but I imagine you fixed it. And it's,
Well, we
it's up and
actually
running now or
involved
not?
destroying it properly and then
Okay.
resyncing it. But
Okay.
that does take a while
if you were
because
on
your
the-
package set is like 600 gigs
Yeah, there's a lot of data to move back
across
and
the
forth.
public internet.
But, uh-huh.
When was the last time you had to
Oh,
upload
cool.
600 gigs? Last week,
Yeah,
right?
that takes a long time, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
okay, glad we fixed that. That was something that was affecting people on the East Coast in particular.
Yeah.
Here in America, we were seeing an out of sync node causing some failed downloads.
Yes.
So that's been corrected. We have some new language localization that's taking place. I forget which language that is off the top of my
Hindi.
head, but
It says
Hindi. Okay, so getting a cool translation. We also did some major work to our PBI system this last week, which will be coming out probably later this week, maybe early next, which replaces the Fuse module with a better user land implementation that does all the virtualization of pathing and
doesn't
whatnot.
crash your kernel.
So much faster, much more stable, and yeah, it doesn't need to hack the kernel
Yeah.
up to do it. So
Awesome.
and it doesn't use broken Fuse system calls, which I spent an unfortunate amount of time looking at last
Yeah.
week, and I'm still very sad about the state of the kernel module in Fuse. But anyway, that's a whole nother story for a whole nother day. So we are fixing that, and we'll be pushing out some updates here shortly. And we are working on some new stable builds as well. So hopefully we'll have those available pretty soon.
Nice. I'd love to update my
Cool.
laptop to 10 stable.
Yes, I know. I keep promising
No
to do
problem.
it, Alan, and I got so sidetracked with this PBI thing
I
this last
haven't
week. But it's
booted my
coming.
laptop in a while, so
Oh, okay. Well, good deal. But
Yeah.
hopefully we'll get you something new to.
yeah,
mess
I just
around
need
with
it
here shortly.
by the 20th or so that when I head out to Linux Fest Northwest, I can bring FreeBSD
okay.
10 stable
Okay.
on my PC-BSD machine. Show it off to all the
Fantastic.
Linux
Yeah.
people and be like, hey, look at this. It looks
Well, we
like
gotta-
Linux, but it's better.
Right. We got a new set of packages building for our Edge 10
Nice.
release set right now. So once those are done, then I'll kick back off the stable
so that,
builds, and we'll get that.
your
worked out.
Edge package set is like the raw ports tree, and
That's-
the regular one is
Well,
your
yeah, that's
curated
more of
one?
our bleeding edge. So just as an explanation of what we do, when we release a release like 10.0, we have what is called a production package set, and that will be stable for 3 months. And we will only backport like security fixes or important bug fixes to the PC-BSD utils in that package set. We're not going to be tweaking KDE or Xorg or anything until that 3-month period is up. Now, during that 3-month period, we'll be building another package set called Edge, which is our bleeding edge set. And that will be a more current ports tree where maybe the new KDEs come in, maybe the new GNOME has come in, new X, pretty much new everything, right? So that one is a little more bleeding edge because ports
Yes.
break. I mean, people update things and we find out, oh, this part of KDE broke, that part broke. So we run that for 2 months. We build those about every 2 weeks. And then 2 months in, we will freeze that. We'll come up with a good set, try and fix any last bugs that exist in maybe the desktops or whatever, make sure everything's is working properly. And then that'll become the new production set. And then that'll go on for another quarter and so forth and so on until we come out with the next major release, which would be 10.1 in this case, probably later this summer. So, yeah, a little brief explanation there on how all this works. But and then in the middle of that, we try and sneak a stable build in there while we can. So that poor build server is so
Yes.
busy. But it's good.
We've
It's
almost
good.
got the
That's
hardware
what it's
sorted out where I can actually finally get you that beehive I promised.
for. Ooh,
Yes.
yeah. If you give me a couple Beehive instances, we might be able to make this a little
Yes.
faster. So that'll be good. Awesome. Okay, first up, we have feedback and questions segment. We have Antonio this week talking about OpenVPN bridging. So I'll let you read this
Says,
one, Alan. See
Hey
what you
guys, I
think.
have a question about setting up a bridged OpenVPN setup using FreeBSD. I'm looking for some guides on how to set up a bridged FreeBSD OpenVPN server with Linux clients. Some of the articles out there that discuss this, but they date back to FreeBSD 7. If this is any help in pointing me in the right direction would be awesome. Well, firstly, nothing with the networking stuff will have changed since FreeBSD 7. That's kind of one of the nice things about FreeBSD is when you learn how to do something, it generally just keeps working. Like stuff.
Yeah, maybe the article hasn't been updated because there's been nothing to update. It still just
most
works.
of the skills I have now I learned in FreeBSD 4, and they're still the same. Sometimes there's a newer way to do it that might be less work or something, but generally things don't stop working. As far as this goes, it's mostly a setting in OpenVPN, as far as I know. Like you put it in bridge mode, and then you use a tap instead of a tune or something. I forget. There's some way to do it, and then it all just happens. Or maybe it has to involve a bridge. I don't know.
I think that's a mostly OpenVPN setup, though. It's not necessarily something you do on the FreeBSD side.
Yeah. I've never gone that far. You know, if I ever needed to make a complicated OpenVPN setup, it was here, pfSense, done.
Yep. Well, if anyone in the audience has any better details,
send it in, and we will make a tutorial, and we will have
know.
the tutorial for FreeBSD 10 on how to do OpenVPN bridge.
Various configurations with it. Yep.
That'll be a good one.
Very cool. Okay. Next up, we have Patrick talking about FreeNAS. So a friend of mine uses FreeNAS and just stopped and started it when there was maintenance on the electric system in the house. So I guess it shut off. When he turned it on, he got the DA0 geometry does not match label notice on the screen, and it won't start anymore. He searched and searched the net, but only finds what the cause could be. No idea if there's a solution to be found. His friend is a professional photographer. He has 5 terabytes of his work on there. So can you help us solve this problem without losing any data on ZFS?
I'm guessing there's some other error, because that's just a warning. And I'm guessing there's something else that's actually indicating what's wrong. Because that's that's pretty normal, and it should still work. We would need more information.
Yeah, the Z-pool should still be able to import and find its data.
ZFS hasn't lost any data, for sure. It's just... it's not able to boot all the way because of something. Also, DA0 suggests that the problem is the USB stick that maybe your FreeNAS is installed on, and not the actual hard drives. Although you didn't tell us if they were, what kind of hard drives they were, and so on.
Sure, 5 terabytes. I hope they're not USB drives,
or even just USB.
But
so we need more detail, and I'm guessing there's more than one line of output on the screen that might tell us what the problem is.
Yeah, and the easy solution is just if you're booting off a USB stick, which we're guessing is what you're doing here. Just reflash that. Go grab another USB stick.
Grab a second one. Put FreeNAS on it. Put it up, and it should be able to just import the pool. And you know what?
I believe the settings get stored on disks and everything too.
I don't know
so
if
the USB sticks throw away.
I don't know if I think some of the settings are on the USB stick. I'm not sure. I think although it's always possible to get everything back anyway.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm not.
But that would be the first place I'd start, though, because if it at least boots, then you're in good shape, and that was where the problem was.
Yeah, because geometry does not match label, especially if a USB stick. That makes sense. What it means is he wrote the image to the USB stick, and the USB stick is bigger than the image, right? So the disk label says this drive is only 1 gigabyte. And it's like a 4 gigabyte USB stick. And so that error is not what's stopping it from booting. So you didn't...
Yeah, that's not fatal. And you could have been seeing that the whole time.
Yeah, that was just buried in the message all the time. So that's not the problem. You have to tell us what else it says, because the one you're seeing there just means that the image on your USB stick is smaller than your USB stick, which is perfectly fine. There's a command that can make that go away, but it's really not important. So that error is harmless. You must have some other error that is actually stopping it from starting.
Well, you may have already looked into this or talked to the guys on the FreeNAS forums or their bug tracker. Yeah. So if you've already solved it, just write us back and let us know what your solution was and what the problem was, so we can pass it along, because people may be curious if they run into something similar, how to get around it. Good deal. Okay, and next up we have Chris here, Alan, talking about domain authentication.
Yes, so he says, consider this theoretical scenario. He has a FreeBSD system running Samba to allow people on Windows computers to read and write files on his hard drive of his BSD machine. So first he creates several users and passwords on the FreeBSD system. That might be the first problem. Samba uses a separate password database than the system password database. So you might have to look at, what's it called, TBD password or something? I forget. The Samba manual will explain it. He says, then the Windows users have to enter a FreeBSD username in order to access the share. Windows users have to enter the corresponding FreeBSD password to access. And that's the main thing there, is Samba is going to want to authenticate after its password database, not the FreeBSD password database. And then he wants file permissions enforced by the file system based on the FreeBSD username. One of the reasons why FreeNAS uses Samba 4 now is because it actually allows you to use Windows file system permissions stored on ZFS with ZFS support for ACLs. So you actually can have full, typical Unix file permissions. You have a user, a group, and other, and that's all the permissions you get. You can't give two different users write access without putting them in the same group or something. With ACLs, you can have extended permissions like that, and FreeNAS is all set up to expose that for you. But cool. Yeah, so the Windows users have to use the corresponding FreeBSD password and have FreeBSD permissions. That kind of works, but not exactly. Again, Samba wants to use its password database, not the system password database. He says he's configured Kerberos according to the handbook, and he's got KInit set up to get a Windows domain ticket for a particular Windows domain user. Now he's talking about using Windows domain users instead of FreeBSD users. That's different. Anyway, so his question is it possible to modify his setup such that he has to manually add FreeBSD username to his system such that each new username is identical to the username on the Windows domain?
That sounds like a workaround, but
and again, it's not the FreeBSD system you have to worry about. It's the Samba system, where you can actually have, if you're using Samba 3, yes, but Samba 4 does it better. You can actually have Samba call the Windows domain controller and actually authenticate the user against their Windows credentials and not have to have separate credentials. And he wants to modify that so each user can type his Windows domain password in order to access the share. Again, that requires talking to the domain controller. So he says, what is the process by which FreeBSD validates user passwords? And what ways can you have control over this? So there's a file called nsswitch.conf in /etc, and this controls the order things are checked. The default is a mode called compat, where it'll basically check the local password file, and there's certain extensions you can put to say also check NIS. But if you read the man page for NSSwitch, you can add things like LDAP and say, so check for the user in LDAP. If they don't exist, check on the local password file. Or you can put it the other way around, say check the local password file. If the user doesn't exist, try LDAP. Or you can, by putting, I think there's a variable called like try once or something, or first match or something, that says if you find a user, then use that. If you don't find the user, stop looking, and things like that. And that would allow you, so I think that's what you would do if you want people to be able to SSH in to your FreeBSD box using passwords from an LDAP database or something rather than the local password file. But if you're after Samba, Samba has support for integrating with Windows. It's the whole point of Samba 4 is tighter integration with your Windows domain controller. He says using PAM, you can write your own plugins and authenticate your users any way you see fit. Yes, but that's not really necessarily the way you're going to want to go if you're just trying to get Samba users, right? Because again, Samba doesn't use your system users. It uses whatever you have defined as your Samba users. And so Samba can use LDAP directly itself as well. And he says, and lastly, he says, if he wants to set up his hard drive with file permissions and quotas, it isn't important that each user be an etc password. If you set up your NSSwitch to use LDAP or whatever so that the users exist, then you can use them even if they're not in the password file. And then he says, can you use the Kerberos PAM module to authenticate users from the Windows domain? I don't think so, but Samba can take care of most of what you're after. This gets more complicated if you want the users to be able to have shell access, but you probably don't. If you just want to have it as your file server, then Samba solves all your problems because that's what Samba's for.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool.
Next question.
Okay. Next question from Ron, asking about PC-BSD on multiple disks. So says he has a question about installing PC-BSD across multiple disks. He has an AMD computer, NVIDIA, 16 gigs RAM, 3 drives, 2 SSD, and 1 SATA. 1 terabyte, and he wants to move the home mount point to the second SSD. So he said he looked at some instructions on our forum, but he couldn't get the unmount and destroyed and all the tank stuff to work right with ZFS. So he's asking if perhaps we could do both the command line solution and the GUI solution, provided we could use the disk management tool. So his suggestion is, could we allow installations across multiple disks? Well, actually, Ron, I just added that to our to-do for 10.0.2.
Okay.
So that's something I will take a look at. I'm going to be working on full disk encryption with Jelly anyway. So if I'm going to be working on the installer, I'll see if I can throw that in there as well. And we'll just make it work out of box and get that working for you.
So I guess in that case, you would just do a separate Z pool on each?
Yeah, we'd have to set up a second Z pool, and then that Z pool probably wouldn't be snapped along with the original for boot environments. Although
if you want
I don't know.
If it's your home directories, you don't want it to be snapped or to roll back anyway. But
yeah.
Interesting.
I may do some work in that
yes.
space, though, because when I do the Jelly encryption, I may set up, we have to do a second Z pool for that, too. Yep. And maybe I'll integrate that to boot environments where it snaps both.
With my, well, what are you doing Jelly for? Like home directories or the whole disk?
Well, it's for the whole disk. So we would have a separate Z pool just for boot.
Right. So yeah, mine,
and then
that just has /boot. And I guess you would want that snapped, wouldn't you?
Yes, we would want that snapped in case a new kernel gets installed. So, yeah, I'll be looking into that, though. I just added that to our wiki on the to-do page and assigned it to myself. So
I just realized that that's something
the next couple weeks.
BDIM doesn't deal with for the BSD install setup that I did. If you're using Gelly, then your /boot is a separate pool and isn't taken care of at all.
And it isn't being snapped, and you're not getting proper boot environments. So correct.
I'll have to look at BDIM and make a patch for the ports tree or something.
Correct. So in the meantime, Ron, if you're looking at doing this, you'll probably have to go ahead and, of course, you're going to have to unmount your original user home directory, which includes any users in there because there may be subdirectories that have separate data sets as well. We usually create one per username. So what you're going to have to do is, without logging in as one of the users, so you're not going to be able to do this while you're logged in as yourself, you're going to have to copy that data off somewhere else, obviously, unmount user home, whatever your username is, destroy those data sets. You're going to have to create a new Z pool on the second SSD, and then go ahead and set the mount point on that Z pool to user home, and then whatever your home directory name is for your
probably
username.
The easiest way to do that is create the new pool on the new disk, then ZFS send all the home directories over, and then destroy the old ones and mount the new ones.
Correct. So, and you could even, you could create the new directories. So if you're not comfortable with ZFS send and receive, you don't necessarily know how those work or whatever, you could just create a temporary mount point on the new disk. Just create your user home directory and mount it somewhere else, /mnt, wherever, and then just use copy or tar. I like doing tar streams because that's just what I grew up doing. So
anyway, just if you do ZFS send, you
there's
would preserve your old snapshots and a bunch of other things like that. But it's up to you if you want to. In the ports tree, there's a handy utility called ZXfer that helps with it. I'm the port maintainer for that now for some reason.
Oh, okay. It fell on you.
Well, I use it, and the version of the ports tree was old, and I was like, well, fix it then.
I'll update that. And,
hey, it works on 10 now. Good job.
Cool. So Ron, that's kind of the starting place where I would get going first, though.
Yeah.
But hopefully that he says he got it.
I'm going to have to do
hopefully that'll answer your
Git
question.
pull request on the PC-BSD installer, and make it, call the user names if they try to call their pool tank and default to something that's not tank.
Just send a Git pull request, and we'll change it to something else. Gee whiz, I like tank. You people.
How do you like tank? It's a horrible name. It doesn't even make any sense.
It was in all the old docs, and that was like my first look at ZFS.
Yes, and why do you think
tank.
everybody's is called tank? Because they just did exactly what was in the guide. So that's why in all the docs, I call it like my pool, so that you realize that you can call it whatever you want.
We all thought it was magic too back in the day. Oh, tank is what ZFS uses, right?
Well, exactly. Yeah. This is emphasizing that this is replaceable, and please don't use this name. It's like when I write documentation, the replaceable name will be so horrible that you'll definitely replace it.
So we're gonna go like my pool or something like that. Fine, whatever.
And then
as long as it boots, I don't care. I'll figure it out.
Yes.
Just don't make it Z pool, because then you're running Z pool.
Yes,
Z pool.
That's bad.
Cool. Okay. Well, next up we have for you, Alan, from Tyler.
He says, hello. First, I want to say thanks for the podcast. He recently started migrating his personal server at Linode to BSD, and he's listened to the podcast and got much information about BSD. He says, bit of extra information, he's blind, and he finds it a bit funny that audio listeners get to suffer like he does through the tutorials, just hearing me whacking on the keyboard.
Sure.
He says that
clacky.
He says the website is awesome to keep up with everything, though, and he likes that. He did have a couple of questions, so he knew we were looking for questions, so he sent these in. He says one, he was thinking of offering MUD hosting, which is a multi-user dungeon. It's kind of like IRC, but a game.
It's still around. Yep.
And he wasn't sure what sorts of solutions were employed. What would be used, for example, to prevent someone, or at least log any attempts to use my server as part of a denial of service or sending spam or anything like that. So I guess he's talking about giving people a shell account to run the MUD on.
That sounds like jail opportunity for
possibly.
me. Jail.
Well, you asked the right person. I used to run an IRC shell provider for about 10 years. So I'd let people, it's like, here's a shell, you can run an IRC server. Locking stuff down with login.conf to limit like the number of connections they can make, right? If you're only allowed to make 128 outbound connections, then you can't do much of denial of service by creating too many sockets. IPFW DummyNet can allow you to limit bandwidth even per username. So you can say, each user is only allowed to use 1 megabit of bandwidth. Since it's a text game, they're probably not going to go over that. And if they try to do a denial of service, it'll just be really, really weak. There's a couple other things I can do, I suppose. He says about sending spam email through proxies. Depends what you want to do there. That's more something. Sure. Every email that goes out gets logged in your fire log, mail log, so you can, the log indicates which user sent the mail, so you can do that. I don't know that there's an easy solution with SendMail, but if you're using something else, there are solutions where you can. I know one of my web hosting servers is set up so that users can only send 1,000 emails a day, and after that, it just stops letting them send email. Things like that. Generally, things aren't so bad. Little chmodding to make sure people can't do like an ls on the home directory and stuff like that. It's not a big deal. And he says, 2, what opportunities, if any, exist for someone to make money using BSD? Well, A, you could charge money for your MUD hosting, but I don't know that you get very far with that. But lots of stuff, I suppose. Any kind of development you want to do, hosting stuff for people, building stuff for people,
Well, cool. Well, good answer to the question there, Alan. So, okay, cool. That's the end of our feedback and questions for the week. So, as usual, we'll mention all our tutorials are going to be posted in their entirety at bsdnow.tv. So go ahead and check that out. Even if you're watching this show, 6 months or 6 years in the future, hopefully everything's still up there.
Will
you
be.
can go take a look at it.
Especially TJ does a good job of updating the tutorials. So, when a newer version of OpenBSD came out, our old tutorial got updated with newer instructions, or when people send in feedback, it's like, oh, hey, when I was setting up the firewall, I also made it do this. And he's like, oh, that's cool. And he added that in. Like, I think there's an example in our PF tutorial now for stopping people going to certain websites. So in the example, I think if you try to go to ubuntu.com, you get redirected to bsdnow.tv. Nice. But, when I was teaching system administration and firewall admin at the college, that was a popular thing. It's like, you want to stop people going to Facebook. So when they try to go to Facebook, they get redirected to the, employee fair use policy or whatever, saying that, hey, you're at work, no Facebooking.
That's right.
Yep, it looks like Chris froze. Anyway, so if you want to watch live, it's on at 2 p.m. Eastern, which is 1800 UTC. And you can tune in at jblive.tv or at bsdnow.tv/live.